High temple scandal. Monks defrocked after police find porn, sex toys, drugs, and escort contacts in raid. Four Buddhist monks have been arrested and stripped of their robes after police uncovered a shocking cache of banned items during a raid on a temple in eastern Thailand. The raid took place in January 27 at Saffron monastery in Chonburi province, following complaints from local villagers who alleged that monks were using drugs and keeping firearms inside their temple grounds. Now let's dive deeper and explore every layer of this story on our AI podcast.
So I want you to picture something for a second. You're in a temple complex, maybe eastern Thailand. It's early morning. You can smell incense. You hear that low rhythmic chanting. It's the perfect picture of serenity, right?
It absolutely is. And for millions of people, that's not just a postcard image. It's, the spiritual bedrock of their entire life. The temple is the anchor.
Which is exactly why what we're covering today feels, well, it feels less like a crime story and more like a sacrilege.
Yeah.
We're taking that serene image and just shattering it.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about meditation. We're talking about a police raid on January 27 at the Saffron monastery in Chonburi. And what they found wasn't inner peace. It was, a mess of contraband you'd expect to find somewhere completely different.
The contrast is jarring. We've got a stack of reports here on this raid. The press is calling it the desecrated robes scandal.
Yeah.
But we have to connect it to the bigger picture. We really need to look at it alongside the massive Sika Golf blackmail ring.
Right. So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. How do we get from a vow of poverty and celibacy to, well, meth, guns, and multi-million-pound blackmail schemes? This feels like a genuine crisis of faith.
And it's happening in a country where the stakes are just incredibly high. You have to look at the numbers to get the gravity of it. The National Office of Buddhism says 93.4% of Thailand's population identifies as Buddhist. The clergy, the Sangha, they are one of the most revered institutions in the whole country.
Monks are on a different level, socially, almost untouchable.
And that untouchable status is, I think, a huge part of this story. The police don't just kick down the door of a monastery. You need a very, very good reason. So let's start there, at Saffron. What triggered this? It wasn't just a random check.
No.
No, and this is critical. The raid was started by the community itself. Local villagers filed the complaints.
And you have to understand how big a deal that is.
Yeah.
In Thai culture, supporting the temple is how you make merit. To accuse a monk of something, that's socially risky. It's like you're attacking the faith itself.
Exactly. So for them to go to the police, the behavior must have been completely out of control.
Yeah, they weren't complaining about, chanting being off-key. They were alleging that monks were using drugs and keeping firearms.
Right.
When the people who give you food and money are the ones calling the cops, something is deeply broken.
It's the breaking point. The reverence for the robe was finally outweighed by the reality of what was happening. So the police go in, they search the monks' living quarters, and the inventory of what they found, it just dismantles the entire idea of monastic life.
Dismantles is a very polite word for it. Let's run through the list, because every single item tells a story here. First up, a pistol, a firearm, inside a monk's private room.
Which is the most fundamental violation imaginable. The very first precept of Buddhism is to abstain from taking life. Owning a weapon is a direct contradiction of that. It turns a place of refuge into a place of potential danger.
Right. It suggests they were either scared of something or involved in something that needed, enforcement. But it gets weirder. Police found a penis enlargement pump and sex toys and a DVD player with a porn disc still inside.
This just paints a picture of a lifestyle that is actively hedonistic. The vow of celibacy isn't just about not having sex. It's about subduing desire itself. Finding a penis pump, that's not a momentary lapse. That's a premeditated, ongoing pursuit.
It's a hobby at that point. You have to buy it, hide it, use it. And then the money. Officers found about 2,000 pounds in cash.
Monks are supposed to rely on alms. Finding a personal stash of cash like that next to all the other stuff, you immediately start asking where that money came from.
Well, we might have a clue. The police also found a written contact list. And it wasn't for other temples. It was allegedly linked to escort services.
And there you have it. That ties the cash, the sex toys, and the list all together into one coherent, ugly picture of organized vice inside the temple. It's a total collapse of discipline.
But they didn't just find physical evidence. They did urine tests on the spot.
And that's where the villagers' fears were scientifically confirmed. 3 of the monks tested positive for methamphetamine.
Meth. In a monastery. We have the names here. Fra Supachai Jantawong, who's 35. Frawira Muktasanid, 45, and Frathanapol Mizon, 59. These aren't young kids. One of them is nearly 60.
And it wasn't just them. The rot went all the way to the top. The abbot, Frafudasang Tebwan, was also arrested.
The abbot is the leader. He's the moral compass, if he's compromised. But before we get to his own separate legal drama, I want to talk about the excuse for the meth. Because Tras Supachai, he didn't deny using it. He admitted he'd been on it for 3 years.
3 years, that's a significant period. He was a functioning addict inside the clergy.
But his reason. He claimed he was using meth to cope with severe pain from diabetes and high blood pressure. He actually said, "It's for relieving nerve pain. I only use them in extreme cases."
It's just a fascinating rationalization. Medically, it's complete nonsense. A stimulant like meth is probably the worst thing you could possibly take for high blood pressure.
Yeah.
But psychologically, it tells you he's trying to medicalize his addiction.
He's trying to save face. It's not I like getting high. It's I'm treating my illness.
Exactly. He's clinging to a justification that makes him a victim, not a perpetrator. But the fact that he got away with it for 3 years, that speaks to the total lack of oversight. Who checks on the monks? Apparently, nobody.
Until the villagers have had enough. Now, the abbot, Fra Fodasong Taiwan, he had a completely different legal problem, which I found really surprising. He was found to be a Karen national and wasn't registered in Thailand's civil records. What does that even mean in this context?
So this adds another layer of complexity. The Karen are an ethnic group. Many live on the border between Thailand and Myanmar. Because of conflict and history, many are stateless or refugees. So for the abbot to be unregistered, it means he essentially had no legal status in Thailand. He was undocumented.
So how does an undocumented person become the abbot of a monastery?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Becoming an abbot involves vetting, years of service, approvals. The fact that a man with no legal ID could run a monastery suggests a massive failure of bureaucracy within the religious leadership.
So is he just being deported?
Yes. Handed over to immigration, expected to be sent back.
And the others? The ones with the drugs and the guns?
The response there was fast. Colonel Saxilp Kamnodson of the ISOC, the Internal Security Operations Command, confirmed they were all immediately defrocked.
I want to pause on that name, ISOC. That's the military's internal security agency. Why are they involved in a temple raid?
Because in Thailand, religion is seen as a pillar of national stability. A threat to the integrity of Buddhism is almost seen as a threat to national security. Bringing in ISOC shows how seriously the state is taking it. Colonel Saxilp is clear. They are permanently banned from the order, and the 3 drug users are being sent to rehab.
It's good there are consequences. But the Chonburi raid feels like a symptom of a much, much bigger disease. You have these monks breaking rules, but then you have something far more organized and predatory. We have to pivot to the Sika Gulf scandal.
Yes. Because if Chonburi was about a breakdown in discipline, the Sika Gulf case is about how that breakdown can be exploited for criminal profit. It's about organized predation.
Sika Gulf is the nickname for a woman named Wilawan Emsawat. She's 35, same age as one of the monks in Chonburi, but she wasn't living in a temple. She was running a massive criminal enterprise.
A massive one. Her operation was basically a high-stakes honey trap. She'd target high-ranking monks, seduce them, secretly record the encounters, and then blackmail them.
She knew that for a monk, a sex scandal is.
Yeah.
It's a career ender. It's total social ruin.
She held their reputations hostage, and the scale of her operation was just industrial. When police seized her devices, they found 80,000 sexually explicit photos and videos.
80,000. I can't even get my head around that number. That's not a side gig. That's a full-time job.
It represents dozens, maybe hundreds of victims. And the police noted that in some of the visuals, the monks were still wearing their traditional orange robes. But there was one video that really captured the public's outrage. It showed a monk lying next to her, and she slaps him on the head.
I read about that. Here in the West, a slap is just disrespectful. But in Thailand, hitting someone on the head, that's a whole other level, isn't it?
Dad, it's a profound taboo. The head is the most sacred part of the body in Thai culture. For a woman to strike a revered monk on the head, it's a visual of the complete inversion of the social and spiritual hierarchy. It shows she didn't just have leverage, she owned him.
And she made a fortune from it. The reports say she amassed nearly 9 million pounds.
9 million. Through blackmail, money laundering, receiving stolen goods.
Which begs the question, where does a monk or a group of monks get 9 million pounds to pay a blackmailer?
And that's the darkest part of this whole story. Monks don't have salaries. This money had to be coming from diverted temple funds. Donations meant for charity, for upkeep, for education. all being funneled into her pockets to hide their sins.
And she was living well, rented a luxury home. What I found fascinating, though, was how she'd visit the temples. She hired luxury cars. Why do that?
It was part of the con. In Thailand, appearance is status. If she shows up on a scooter, she doesn't get a meeting. But arriving in a luxury car, dressed like a wealthy, pious donor, a hyso figure, she gets immediate access to the senior monks. She looks like someone who could make a huge donation.
She used their own greed and their desire for status against them. It's so calculated.
And her downfall was just as dramatic. Her husband, who was a local politician, left her after he discovered the flow of temple funds into her bank accounts.
So we have the Chonburi raid on one side, meth and guns, and we have Sinka Golf on the other, a 9 million pound blackmail ring. You put these two things together. What does that do to the average Thai person's faith?
It creates a deep crisis of trust. Let's go back to the numbers. You have 45,000 temples in Thailand. The temple is the community center. It's everything. And people donate money expecting to generate good karma or merit.
Right. It's a spiritual transaction. I support the faith. I'm a good person.
But when you read headlines about that money being used for meth or to pay off a blackmailer, that transaction feels fraudulent. The emotional damage is huge.
It feels like a catch-22. The culture says don't question the monks, but if you don't, you get sick of golf.
That shield of holiness is what allowed this corruption to fester in the dark for so long. But what's interesting about the Chonburi raid is that the villagers did speak up. It signals a shift. The public's patience is wearing thin. They still love Buddhism, but they're becoming intolerant of the corruption within the institution.
They're separating the faith from the fallible men who represent it.
Precisely. And the demand now is for regulation, for financial audits of temples, for real background checks. The idea that a temple can just operate as its own little kingdom is becoming unacceptable.
But trying to implement that across 45,000 temples? I mean, that's a logistical nightmare.
It is. But the alternative is this continued erosion of public faith. And restoring trust is so much harder than losing it. You can defrock 4 monks. You can arrest Sika Golf. But how do you convince the person in the village that their donation is going to feed a novice and not buy a pistol?
That's the real tragedy here, the betrayal.
It's the betrayal of a sacred trust.
So let's bring this all back to where we started, to that image of the serene temple. When we look at it now, we have to see the complexity behind the walls. We've gone from, sordid discovery of sex toys to a multi-million-pound criminal enterprise.
We've seen that the saffron robe doesn't make someone immune to human nature. It's a garment, not a force field.
And we've learned that really the only check and balance is the community itself. If those villagers hadn't spoken up, that adult would still be there, and the meth use would still be happening.
Transparency is painful, but it's the only cure.
So before we sign off, I just want to leave you with one final thought that's been bothering me. We know about Chonburi because the villagers hit their breaking point. We know about Sika Golf because the money got so big it just exploded.
These are the cases that failed to stay secret.
Exactly. So in a system with 45,000 temples, all protected by this deep-seated reverence and a taboo against criticism, how many other Sika Golfs are out there right now? How many other caches of contraband are sitting in rooms completely undetected just because everyone is too polite or too scared to ask what's really going on behind the temple walls?
It's a question that suggests we're probably only seeing the very tip of the iceberg.
On that cheery note, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next.
Okay, the one question for you. How did a sacred Thai temple turn into the center of a drug spawn and escort scandal? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.